It's a way of life.
Tastes like freedom.
It's the most divine microcosm.
Mind blowing.
It's a revolution.
Heart wide open.
Liberated love. It's liberated love. Conscious conversations.
The exhilarated expansion of self.
Sacred sexuality. Call it whatever you like. All I know is it feels amazing.
It's the most decadent way. to live life.
Intimate and intuitive conversations with epic humans who are disrupting the status quo and living a life with untypical success. Hello and welcome to the Hedonistic Way at Midday show. Today I have such an amazing guest to share with you guys. I call her the Sheldon Cooper of the spiritual world because this woman's capacity to expand is absolutely out of this world. She has one of the biggest hearts I know. She's a beautiful fusion of spirit and intellect. She is all things embodiment, somatic practices, and I don't know what is going to transpire, but I know that it will be amazing.
Hello, it worked.
We did it. I was just saying that we've had this show booked today, for I reckon probably about 4 months.
Oh,
because
easy.
yeah, I know. I was going to say 6 months, so I think 4 is probably being a bit generous.
Yes.
But I'm so glad that you are on the show. Welcome.
Thanks, Renee. Can you just help me here? I had my camera all set up, but it doesn't work. So I have to hold it. Am I about right?
Yeah, perfect.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
Now, I know that you've been in Sydney brain spotting.
Yes, I have.
Tell us about that. What is it and what did you discover?
Yeah, so it's actually my 4th training in brain spotting. So this was a advanced phase 3 practice. Particular training focused on performance expansion and for both athletes and actors and speakers and performers and public speakers in particular. But we're also looking at resolving performance trauma or sports injuries and those sorts of things, and how I think that the amazing takeaway, apart from techniques and tools, is that our brain forms trauma networks. And so that, even an athlete who, broke his hand, throwing a punch, that can actually, a number of sports injuries will then connect back into earlier traumatic events and incidences in the past and form all kind of encapsulated neural networks of, let's say, dissociated trauma that at some point along the phase of somebody's life, the accumulated traumas can start to actually become problematic because there's these little dissociated networks in the brain that start to become, there's too many of them for function. And you can see things like, like when actors fluff their lines for no reason at all, or we see it in, sports people, they might suddenly not be able to throw a ball, under certain conditions. Like it's kind of, it has all these kind of freaky, medical connotations and stuff like that, or they just kind of call it, golfers are famous for it, and a few other sports professions are famous for it. But it's actually these dissociated neural networks in the brain. And so I don't have it here with me, but do you remember the old-fashioned TV antennas?
Yeah.
Well, we don't have to use that, but we use that, we extend that and have the client look at the tip of the antenna, the pointer, and kind of recall some traumatic events, or then we kind of guide them to different kind of experiences, and that hopefully that just actually just starts to dissolve those dissociated barriers to which traumatic. It's not actually the, I mean, you know, the trauma is an issue, but the big issue is the dissociated barriers towards actually feeling your whole self.
Yeah,
and that's actually what creates these, you know, the feelings, creates the issues around trauma for many people, is that they actually feel connected to their whole being. And that's how it relates really to all of us. You know, we all want to feel more of who we are, and we want to feel more connected to who we are and be available for more connection to other people. And we need to be able to help these dissociative barriers come out of the way, and they're in our neural networks of our brain. So,
why do you think that trauma is necessary in our evolution?
I think we're in our bodies, and I mean, I don't know whether it, you know, necessary is exactly the right word, but it's just a part of our evolution. I also don't think that it's you know, it's not in our destiny or whatever to necessarily overcome all our trauma. But what I do know about trauma is that it can be, when it is transformed, when the power of trauma is harnessed, it is transformative, it is healing, it is a gift, and it is actually some kind of magical quality that can actually be transformed in the person. Like, I think can be very connected to creativity, for example. So when you actually heal your trauma, you can be a very powerful creative person. When you have a lot of unhealed trauma, you can still be a very creative person, but the power in your creativity, it's more chaotic than powerful. We're actually looking to be really embodied and not kind of disembodied and chaotic in our expression and our, you know, and our gifts.
That's a really beautiful distinction in that, you know, having that, you know, people can still be creative, but it can often be chaotic. So I'm curious then to know, Raquel, I get this feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, is then I feel like there would be a lot of trauma that is kind of dormant within our nervous system or bodies or fields or whatever it is. How then can someone know that they have some dormant trauma in their field? What kind of things can they be experiencing in their reality and lives?
I think feeling not connected is a really big indicator. And you know, the processes that I teach, the focal outcome that I teach really is to help people feel more connected to their bodies and their body sensations. And if they can't really tap into that, that would be a really good clue. Is like, if they don't think that so it's a perception. If they don't perceive that they feel their bodies too clearly or, you know, too precisely, then that would be an indicator. If they don't feel connected just to their self, and perhaps they're actually hanging on too tight to an identity. For example, I mean, we could take it to the extreme and say hanging on too tight to the identity of being unwell, being ill, being chronically unwell, right? That can actually be an identity that, you know, you don't want to lose. I mean, I've been there. I've been in that situation. I had chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, migraines, IBS. I was unable to walk for about 9 months. I was really stuck in a place where I identified with that. And as I was healing, you know, I had to also go through that process of letting go of that identity of being a chronically unwell and disabled person. And so it's not.
Sorry, you continue. Go finish what you're
Yeah,
saying.
I mean, it's certainly not an easy thing to let go of, but I mean, you know, like the psychotherapeutic community likes to call it secondary gain, and I think some of the kind of heavy duty mindset people might call it secondary gain as well. But I actually think it's far more complicated than that. It's, you know, at a nervous system level, you know, when you're, let's say when you're chronically unwell, you don't have very much left, you know. And so to actually let go of your identity, regardless of how, you know, how, let's say, less in service of your evolution and growth it is, or even less in service of your wellness, it's still something that you have, and you don't have very much when you're in that place. So just the need to have something, and you know, our need to be identified with something is really, really strong. We need to feel like we have, you know, a sense of who we are, and if we find any identity, we tend to cling to it. So that can be an indicator of trauma. And I'll just mention there's two other connections that we might say, Renee. You know, so I work from connecting from the body, connecting to the self, and then connecting to others, which is real, and your community. So, you know, if there are any kind of little glitches in connecting to community or others, often when most people see it, although people come to me saying, I don't feel very connected to my body. So in working with me, they may identify that way, but most people will identify saying, I don't feel very connected to even my husband or my children. You know, like I have, you know, I love them, but I can't feel that. You know, that's actually what I hear. It's not that they're not a good parent. They're an excellent parent. But somehow the feeling is not there. They want to feel it, really feel it. And that's what's missing for some people. And that's simply the connection to our highest power, our higher self, higher spirit, something like that. If we don't have that connection to an external sense of something supporting us and being with us, that can indicate trauma as well. So, you know, you can kind of work through those layers and probably be able to identify where in that layer of, you know, body, self, other, spirit, there is trauma. So that's how I would identify it particularly. There are other ways, but that's kind of my first go-to is where is the disconnection. Yeah. But that identifies, if you go back to what I was saying about the neural training that I was doing, that identifies potentially the dissociated neural networks in the brain.
Yeah. So you were talking just earlier about how people who are chronically ill and holding on to that identity, it seems like a really, I don't know what word, contradictory or even kind of a bizarre thing, a self-sabotaging thing that you want to hold on to, because, you know, being chronically ill is not great, you know, and it's something that, so what would make someone then hold on to that? And why would it be so hard for someone to let go of that?
Well, I'd like to address it from a nervous system perspective, because there are plenty of people who might like to, you know, speculate on those kinds of things on a psychological level, and like, you know, even what you're saying, self-sabotage. So for me, you know, self-sabotage in the nervous system doesn't exist. The nervous system is always supporting us. I think one of the things, important things to think about is about contraction and expansion. And these things are always happening in the nervous system. As long as we are alive, we expand and we contract. Okay? We're constantly doing that. Just as, you know, our lungs do that, you know, our breath does that. We see that, you know, you know, shown in many external forms in our world, the in and out, the contraction and the expansion. Okay, our nervous system is doing that all the time. Quite naturally, when we have experiences of expansion, it will follow by contraction. You know, people kind of talk about that as, you know, like an experience. So they might go away for a weekend retreat or something, have a really expansive experience, and then there's the contraction that naturally happens, and it's got nothing to do with anything but this natural in and out that occurs in our nervous systems. Okay.
Yeah.
So for a chronically ill person, they don't spend a lot of time in expansion. They're spending most time in locked down contraction. So
Right,
it's
okay.
a contraction that actually can't really open very much.
Mm.
It has
Yeah.
to open somewhat. Otherwise, we wouldn't be breathing. We wouldn't be alive. So always
Yes. Yeah.
contraction and expansion, always happening. And this is actually, I'm going to sort of jump in just a moment, because I want to say is like, this is actually the focus, one of the most important focuses of nervous system wellness that is missed by mindset and various other things. And the mind that wants to go straight to the problem. The mind always wants to think there's a problem, because that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to keep us alive from an evolutionary perspective. It's a problem solver. Great thing for it.
Yeah.
However, when you're actually dealing with any form of wanting to overcome something on a nervous system level, one of them, the key things, is to actually be able to notice the coherence in the nervous system, to be able to notice where what we are designed to do is actually happening. This is not bypassing. It is not avoiding reality. It is saying, while all of the shit that is happening, there is also something true, innate, and good, and life-giving that is happening. And that's also what we want to acknowledge.
Yes.
And what I tend to do is lean into that while acknowledging the other thing. So a lot of practitioners have different views about where to sit on that line, how far to lean. And certainly in my community of practitioners, you know, some want to lean 100% to noticing the coherence, and others really want to lean, you know, 80+% to noticing the problem. What I've found is it's probably somewhat better to head maybe into this somewhere realm, depending on the person's presenting problem and depending on how long their nervous system has been an issue for. It's better to kind of lean somewhere between the 60 and 70% of noticing the coherence. Every person benefit from, because of the way that our neural networks are lined up, every person will benefit from us having a lean into the goodness and the innate, you know, well-being of our system. And what I also find is that, you know, through process, even if I'm working with a very robust and resilient nervous system, we want to lean into the coherence first. Okay, we actually don't want to go to the problem first. So even if you know, we might decide, you know, I mean, if I were working with you, Renee, I might even, you know, go sort of half, because I know how, you know, how much capacity you have. But I would lean into all of the coherence first and let your nervous system actually take up and notice how it actually is working and working well. And so then when we actually go over to the problem, your nervous system says, oh, I work really well and I totally know how to fix this problem. And then your nervous system, we don't actually have to do anything. We don't have to figure out anything. We don't have to problem solve. We don't have to find out what the solution is. We just sit back and let your nervous system do it. It's not even has to figure it out. It actually just does what it knows. But it has to have that little reminder of like, yep, we know you, we trust you, and you can do that. You know, just like you would, you know, a child or anything, is like, you don't turn around and throw a child into a really difficult situation without at least saying, I've seen you do this before, and I know and trust that you can do this again, because you are brilliant and amazing, and you know, I can't live with, you know, I can't imagine you not being able to do what I'm asking you to do. You know, it's like, and that's what we have to do with our nervous systems. They're not children, but they do actually respond to our love, you know?
Yeah, yeah. The way you talk about the nervous system, I want to ask you about that is because you're so unique in how you talk about it. I want to ask you a couple of things, and it may sound like a bit of a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, is when you refer to a nervous system, how do you see a nervous system, and how does it differ from, say, someone's energy field, or, you know, what has it got to do with spirituality, as well as, there's another thing in there, as well as our capacity. You talk about capacity, our capacity to hold energy. How does it all work?
Yeah, they're really, really good questions, Renee. They're really good questions. I think firstly, I see our nervous system as the physical seat of our energy and intuitive systems.
Yeah.
So it's actually the embodiment of our energy, which is kind of a bit of a weird concept. Our energy actually has a kind of a seat of embodiment. But, you know, this is actually, our nervous system is, our energy is embodied because we're in a body. And embodiment of our energy and our intuition lands in our nervous system, and particularly our intuition lands in our enteric nervous system, which is what's in the gut. Okay, and that's the gut-brain connection in particular.
Yeah.
So we have a number of nervous systems. We have a central nervous system, an autonomic nervous system, and an enteric nervous system, to put into three quite distinct categories. Mostly I'm talking about the autonomic nervous system, which is the fight, flight, survival processes. The central nervous system is more connected to the spinal cord, and the enteric nervous system is more connected to the gut and brain axis. So I'm aware of those two, and but they have additional or slightly different functions. But of course, they're all connected. And, you know, this is the thing. I think this is one of the other thing that's amazing about our nervous system and how it connects to our energy and our spirituality and our spiritual expression, is that our nervous system is everything. It is the whole of our being and the whole of our body in embodiment form. So that's our energy as well. You know, our energy is the whole of our expression beyond embodiment. You know, if we could think of it that way, is yes, our, you know, like we have energy processes that you can track it like on a physical level inside our body, on a chemical level. So we have chemical energy processes, right? But on an energetic level, they are actually residing outside of our body. So the connection between our energy outside of our body and the energy inside our body, that's a nervous system, is the embodiment of our energy. And so the connection is huge. That they are the same thing. You know, it's like, you know, I mean, I don't change when I'm inside my house to going outside my house. I'm the same being, right? It's the same thing. My nervous system inside my house, inside my body, when I walk outside my house, becomes my energy field, or go outside my body, but it's the same thing. So when we're feeling, we're actually, you know, that's what we're feeling, that with our body, you know, that is our nervous system having the sensations. That's not our energy. When we're outside of our body, in our energy bodies, and they have an experience, that's something else. Yeah. So they're the same thing, but and they're all important, but they're exactly the same thing. There was another part to that question, I think, Renee, and I can't remember. Do you remember anything?
No, I think that was pretty much, I think you covered it really beautifully. I'm curious then to ask, you know, there is so much to what you do, you know, all the work that you do within the nervous system. And then you bring in this shamanic element to it as well. And there's the somatic practices, and you talk about embodiment in a way, again, that is very different to how, you know, how I refer to embodiment. It's very different, same, but different. But, you know, what is the common thread for you? Like, what drew you to these modalities in particular? And what's the thread in terms of the transformation that you give your clients?
That is I don't know if I can say there was one thing that drew me to them. There are a number of things. One is just purely, I believe, past life experience as shaman and initiate many times over, and I've had kinds of things confirmed for me many times. So I think, you know, I've come in with that knowing and that wisdom, and it's just felt so natural to me. I kind of just had to find a way to bring it all together. The way is simply, you know, when I was studying at university and I was studying all these concepts around mental health, and they didn't make sense to me. Like, they felt like a projection, like people were highly pathologizing. And so I went and I studied, you know, anthropology of medicine, and I studied cross-cultural ideas of what health and well-being was. And what I discovered, you know, was that in many cultures, the shamans were what our Western culture would refer to as schizophrenics. So I think the really big ahas for me was that in our culture, we give people names like schizophrenia and bipolar and all these other kinds of pathologizing terms, which can sometimes be useful. Please, you know, don't, it can sometimes be useful. But I think they're just, you know, like they're just like a tag, and they should just be considered like that. It's almost like how we use hashtags. We don't live by them, for God's sake, you know, right? I don't remember hashtags from, you know, one day to the next, right? You know, that's really as much as, you know, a mental health label should be given, right? I discovered, you know, all these other cultures having a different, and it's not about you know, like putting somebody who's suffering on a pedestal and saying, oh no, they're a gifted being. You know, I think we have to be really careful that we don't do things like that, and that's what we can do from the outside. So from the outside, when we hear about these amazing concepts of kind of like recognition and understanding and finding a purpose and a place for people within their community, we can tend to, you know, rarefy it a little bit and turn it into something, you know, a little bit godlike. And so it's very hard from the outside to really understand what these cultures are, how they perceive them. But that was what I tried to understand at university. And the more I got into that, I'm like, you know, like understanding that there are greys and all sorts of colors within ourselves that we can't turn around and delineate as black and white. And that's, I think, what I like about the shamanic thing is that we're constantly transitioning from one world to the other. Yes. And the thing that excited me most about shamanism is what's called this liminal space. And so the concept of liminality, which is this place, if I can use it as a really simple example, when you're going, let's say you've committed to go to a music festival. This is a really good example, I think. You've committed to go to a music festival, and, you know, there's all this kind of preparation beforehand, you know, like, and there's this whole sort of, you know, anticipation, and you've got to pack your bag and, you know, organize your transportation and all that sort of stuff. So there's like a nervous system preparation towards that. And when you arrive at the gate you've just come just before the gate to the festival, you're like, this time when you're moving towards the festival, but you haven't quite left your world behind, and you haven't quite arrived into the festival.
Yeah.
And that is the space of liminality. That's actually the space where any potential can be transformed and potentialized, actualized. Something magical can be created in this space that is not yet occupied.
Yes.
Right. And that's the concept of liminality. And for me, that's where, like, I love that world. That's my favorite world. Oops.
I definitely resonate with that. And yeah. And I think, you know, that's what speaks to me most about that, Raquel, and it's something that I'm really thriving towards, is this non-dualistic space where we don't need to polarize or label everything. And I think that that's what you're describing now, is seeing the potential in all moments, and it doesn't need to be this extreme good or bad or this heightened state of whatever it is, but just finding peace in that moment, I think is such a beautiful, I think that's life,
So you've
and we miss that.
Yeah, you've actually nailed. Oh, sorry, darling. You've actually nailed the most important concept, I believe, this nervous system work. And that is to find the joy in neutrality in the nervous system. So it's not about the neutrality. It's not about the neutrality in our feeling state, for example, or not about neutrality in how we respond, or our judgment or our preferences, but a neutrality in the nervous system. And that's actually and where we can have the most, joyful human experience.
That's beautiful. And that's, and now it's just clicked in for me, that it's always felt so significant, and so you've just taken it to a whole new level, which is thank you for that. I think that's you've just brought a new life to that for so many of it. So that's cool. I want to change it up a little bit and ask you, it was months ago, you made a comment about our bodies, and I'm just trying to recall it because I didn't have it at the forefront of my mind. Is you made a comment about our bodies and how, I want to say, no matter what you ate, no matter how much exercise you did, like the size of our bodies, did you say it had something to do with our nervous system? Or I remember you said something that, what was it? Maybe you can refresh my memory.
It's actually to do with the vagus nerve. So the main nerve of our nervous system. It's the one you can actually sometimes see these beautiful, they're quite old pictures of sketches of the nervous system, and literally it looks like a jellyfish, with all of the things and then it goes all the way down the spinal cord. From our brain to our spinal cord, and of course it extends out in all these kind of little little gossamer threads. I think it's beautiful, some of the old depictions of the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is okay, so here's some nice technical stuff. But before I say that, the vagus nerve is connected very much to our experience, our attachment, our relational attachment, our attachment experience with our mother, particularly, and it is particularly our mother, not just parent. It's very, very specifically to the mother. And it's connected to our ability to bond with others and to be able to feel safe when we're connected to others, and to be able to socialize without fear. Okay? Okay. So the other thing we know is that anything to do with food is very, very strongly connected to the attachment system, i.e. the relational system that's been created, co-created with the mother in particular, but it doesn't have to always, your attachment system kind of develops throughout the early life in particular, and can actually even change in latter life. So that's more of a parental, family, social kind of thing. It starts with the mother, your attachment system, but then will actually develop throughout life. But your vagus nerve, in particular, much of that work is done in the early relationship with the mother, okay? So we know that food is very related to the attachment system, which can actually change throughout the life. And we know that attachment is very connected to the vagus nerve, right? Just to give that little picture. Okay. So what happens when we're born? We're actually born with most of our nervous system unmyelinated. Okay. Myelination is a fatty sheath that runs across the outside of the nerves, or a bundle of nerves. And if you imagine like an electrical cord, you know, having it outside of it, and inside are all the wires, right? Most of our nervous system looks like wires or bundles of wires, right? Sometimes you bundle them together to run the same sort of network. And when we're born, there is a very small amount of nerves in the vagus nerve that are intended to be myelinated. Okay, they're intended to be myelinated so that we can be able to bond without fear, to be able to socialize without fear, to be able to feel connected and be connected, all right? And that's what that bundle of nerves that are intended to be myelinated is for. And the way they get myelinated is in safe relational experience with the mother. In such a tuned relational experience, I need to say, actually, with the mother. So we have this thing that we know that there's this optimal, it's called optimal gaze distance between the mother's eye and the baby's eye when she's breastfeeding. It's a 19 centimetre distance. That's actually been measured, you know, that's about as far as not quite newborn babies can see. They, not, you know, at newborn, they can't even see that far. But that's an optimal distance. So that's actually known for, so that's why breastfeeding is encouraged, aside from any kind of, nutrients. It's actually the distance. So you don't have to breastfeed to be able to, you know, to get that optimal distance with your child.
Yes.
And that's actually like building the foundations for this myelinated sheath, this fatty sheath that's really critical. The other way of building that myelinated sheath, if, for example, so with a baby, their capacity is almost zero, like a newborn, zero, right? Capacity for anything. So when we're talking about capacity, we might talk about capacity to hold the gaze of somebody else, even their mother at newborn, for a fraction of a second. They don't have capacity for that. As they grow older, they get capacity for seconds, right? So an attuned mother will, you know, look at her baby in this, you know, place, and when she notices the baby's change in the nervous system before they get distressed, she'll look away and then come back. And then when she notices, like perhaps the eyes just get a teeny little bit wider or something, an attuned mother notices that and then kind of moves away for a moment, right? And as you get older, you start playing that game, right? You play the peekaboo game, but like they're steps towards, there's so many micro steps that move towards the peekaboo game.
Yeah.
Okay? They start with this, others aren't even aware they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? But an attuned mother has all of these kinds of things in her biology that helps her child build that myelinated sheath. And when you have that myelinated sheath built in a really, really robust and developmentally appropriate way, then the attachment is strong and secure, is what it's called. And things like eating disorders are pretty much, they can't happen if you have secure attachment. right? Now, when I say eating disorders, you know, emotional eating, right, is an eating disorder. And I don't even call it emotional eating, you know, like it's just simply it's an eating compulsion, because I think when we start to call it emotional eating, we kind of say, well, what emotions do I have? I'm not sure I've got emotions. I'm just like, I'm not eating because I feel sad, or I'm not eating because I feel happy. I'm just eating, right? So,
and it feels safe.
eating, actually what it does is actually down regulates a hyper aroused nervous system. So the point of the myelinated sheath, when I said it's about like having safety in social connection, so safe social connection down regulates our nervous system, so that if we're stressed, we go out in that's what we're built for, to actually socially connect, to down regulate our nervous system. So physically cannot access the kind of safety we need in our nervous system from being with other people, we're going to use food to do that. Or alcohol, or drugs, or, you know, fast cars, or, you know, lots of other things that we may use, but food in particular was your question, and it's very relevant to to a lot of people. Right? It's actually so that we can actually bring ourselves back into our window of capacity, because we've moved outside of our capacity, because we don't have all of that. Like, it's not like it's like totally wrong, but our biology is just a little bit glitchy. It's a little bit glitchy. Myelination, it's a little bit glitchy in that. So it's found other ways to work. So again, if we come back to this idea of what's working, not so much that the nervous system isn't working, it's found an alternative way of working. Right? So what we want to do is help the nervous system find its way back to another way of working. And that's the reason why we can't often do it ourselves, Renee. And this is again why you know, like it's to try and normalize that and to not shame that, is we can't do stuff that ourselves that we've never learned before, right? And really only from the outside that someone can say, oh, your nervous system is going that way, and actually, if you go that way, you're going to have a really different experience. And that has to be done in the moment. I mean, that's what a lot of people, you know, I mean, I do have exercises and things, but a lot of people, you know, really think that, you know, practicing exercises is what's going to change it. And really, it's teaching the nervous system acting itself in the moment to say, oh, is that how you normally behave? Ah, I get you. How about we tried that instead? Okay. And so that might look like, on a practical level, just to explain that more, is like one of my clients I worked with, you know, once she would finish a process, there was a lot of kind of joy and excitement and like, oh, you know, like I've got some. And what it was like was, what I could feel as the practitioner on the other side was like, she was geeing me up for a party, basically, right? She was wanting me to have a party with her. And, you know, I can totally jump into any party, but as a practitioner, I was like, that's what your nervous system does, right? Once you've actually had a success, right, you then jump into this let's have a party mode, which actually puts it moves you way outside of that neutral that we were talking about earlier. Way outside of the neutral from a nervous system perspective. And so what was happening is there was a lot of knock-on effects of her moving into party mode, you know, a lot more tiredness, and also she wasn't really attracting the clients she wanted to attract from that place. She actually wanted to different kinds of clients who were a bit more grounded, a little bit more corporate, a little bit more focused. And by going into her kind of party nervous system mode, she was actually kind of, in some way, repelling her credibility, let's say. That's probably the way to say it, on a nervous system level. Right? That's just simply like catching the nervous system doing something which is perfectly fine and lovely and normal, and saying, but if you want something else, you know, you want to feel less tired, you want to have a different kind of client experience, all those sorts of things, then you feel more connected, because actually getting into party girl mode pulls you outside of yourself as well.
Yeah,
right?
very true. Very true.
Yeah.
So how can people then begin to, I think, really begin to navigate this space and choose more self-honoring ways and more, I mean, the word kind of peace, inner peace is kind of coming up, because that's how it would feel to me, you know. How can we begin to navigate this, Raquel?
Yeah. So I think it's really simple things around not pushing through, right? Not, I mean, it's not about giving up but it really is about saying, you know, noticing that, you know, the kind of like the normal, traditional, conventional ways of dealing with difficulty and adversity is to say, just keep going, just keep going. You know, you can do it, push through, you know, don't stop now, all those sorts of things that actually can create more stress and more distress on not just the nervous system, because the nervous system then feeds into, you know, our psychological experience and emotional experience and our mental experience as well, right? It feeds into all of those things. And of course, you know, like if we start to tell ourselves that we always have to push harder to succeed, we're always going to say, oh, well, that's what success is always, you know, it's always hard work. It comes after a period of great adversity or great difficulty and great challenge. So we're, you know, like I commented on someone's post this morning. They were saying about how they, you know, relocated to another city, and you know, and things weren't quite so easy for them now. And despite the fact that their mind was really ready for the change, it seemed like something else was going on. And I said, well, it sounds like your body hasn't caught up with the, you know, this great idea your mind had, right? So a lot of us might kind of be able to come to that conclusion. The way to work with that is to actually give your body grace, time and space and grace to feel uncertain, to express its feelings. Right? It's not about going into fear, or even like, you don't even really have to drop into fear. And this is, you know, this is something that's, I want to actually talk about how much you need to drop things, because in many ways you don't have to give yourself over to the fear. It's a bit like what I was saying, where do you lean? So you lean into knowing that there is fear in your system, and that time needs to be taken to be able to come to a new place, right? So the whole expansion, contraction. So you're in contraction. Time needs to pass for expansion to happen, right? You're in fear. Time needs to pass for that to change. So it's holding yourself in this kind of neutral compassion of and I call that a state of grace. You know, it's like that's the place. It's time, space, and grace. What's required? So I said I was going to talk, because I thought this would be really relevant. A lot of people, and I haven't really talked about a lot of work with anger, right? And I thought I might sort of just use that a little bit in saying about, like, when we want to actually, there's a difference between feeling our anger and expressing our anger. And so, you know, there's this kind of cathartic ideas that some people have, that they have to, you know, bash pillows, or, you know, or rage, or scream into a, you know, a blanket or something like that to let their anger out. And for some nervous systems, that is too much. Okay. And I really want to say is that it's not about saying these processes are wrong. It's about saying that for a lot of sensitive nervous systems, or for nervous systems that haven't developed the capacity to hold it, it's too much. So we have to start somewhere else. Now we can build capacity to do that, but we have to start somewhere else. And the best way to start that is by, when the anger arises, just to feel it in your body. And you know, and just like feel the power, because it can be extremely powerful. Like if you actually hold it and don't try to go and release it, that's actually where the power in anger is not actually releasing it. But it can be like, it can be literally like, you know, a little earthquake inside, and sometimes a bigger one, depending on how much rage or anger you've been holding. But you've got to learn to hold it, right?
Yeah.
And then another way to work with it is to notice if there are any self-protective responses the body wants to make in response to their feeling angry, right? And that might be, and this is notice first, it might be, let's say, you know, punching or pushing away, right? Let's just use those as an example, right? Let's say pushing away, right? Noticing that, okay? Then what you want to do is you actually want to do that body response, but very, very, very slowly. So it's not actually feeling, like, it's not actually about doing it. It's about feeling. And so what you're going to do is, it's almost like you're, you know, you're working a little in slow-mo. Like if somebody else were to watching you, they might not always be able to see that you've even moved in sometimes. Because what you're trying to do is, let's say your body wants to push. There are all these little micro things that need to happen in your neck and your shoulder and your, you know, your all the muscles in your back and your ribs and everything else that need to happen for that push to happen, right? It's not just your hands that push. Move too fast, you've actually denied all those other muscles and parts and sinews of your body the chance to have their push. Okay? So you actually want to do it really, really slowly and allow yourself to feel every single thing part of you engage. And maybe the sweet spot's further out, but you still want the whole thing to engage. And if that's tricky, you can just push a little against a wall. Just teeny bit of a push against a wall, and it's amazing how much releases out of the body without having to rage or rant or scream, right? This is the thing. We can actually help the body release, not our mind release its idea of what it thinks anger releasing looks like.
Absolutely. So how can someone know when to hold on to that energy and when to let it go?
Yeah. So I think if you're holding on to the energy and it and you'll know that it comes out, right? That you can't hold on, right? So this is the practice of you've got to try these things really, and you've got to do both of these things, because I find that the more that I actually allow my anger to live inside me, if you like, the more power I have. I actually a lot more power if I let that anger live inside me in a way that I value. Right, so it's not about it really needing to express it. So you can express the feeling inside by, let's say, writing a poem, for example, but you don't have to express the actual rage outside. That make a difference? Yeah,
absolutely.
And so I mean, even we're not talking about you know, protecting other people from it. Even let's say nobody's in the room, you still don't have to release it outside of you. But that takes capacity, and so capacity has to be built. You know, and that's why a lot of people can't do anger, because it requires a huge capacity. You know, I have this. You know, I have this little demo stuff sometimes that I use, which is a glass of water. You know, and imagine the glass of water is the glass is your nervous system, right? And inside it is, you know, it's not just all the things that you're doing for your day. You know, inside your nervous system, to remind you, is all of the things that you don't have conscious control over. right? Really, like, I mean, the way that your blood pressure is, the way that your lungs breathe in and out, the way that your eyes lubricate themselves, the way that your, lashes blink, or even your breath moves, because I know we have some conscious control over our breath, but we don't have full conscious control even of our breath, right? But there are things that we have no conscious control over, and they are part of our nervous system. So when we're actually thinking about a nervous system being full, we have to provide room for all of that unconscious stuff. Involuntary is the really right word. We have to provide room for that involuntary stuff, as well as all the stuff we take on for our day. Now, if you're unwell, you're going to have more load. It's called allostasis, static load. More load on the things on those involuntary processes. It's going to be harder for you to breathe, or harder for your lungs to expand, or harder for, like just your blood to pump, or heart to pump and your blood to circulate. All of those sorts of things are harder. So there's even more work on your nervous system. So that's why we have to rest, right? When we're unwell, even if we're a little bit unwell, we have to rest, because suddenly we're putting more load on our nervous system, and we have to figure out what to drop. And it's not to drop them when we're about to drop. We actually have to step back away when illness starts to arrive, to take the load off, so that our nervous system can, restore itself to health, right? Yeah, absolutely. We're talking about capacity. What I want to say is that the nervous system is designed to move, as I said to you, right? It's designed to expand and contract. So if we take that as our nervous system, and let's imagine that's a full nervous system. For most people, they'd say, that doesn't look too bad. Looks like there's plenty of room at the top, right? Yeah. So what I want to say is that if a nervous system is designed to move, to expand and contract, the only space this nervous system has to move is between here and here. Yeah. Right? Look how much water is in the glass. Yeah. If all that starts to move, what's going to happen? We are going to overflow really quickly. Only if half that starts to move, it's already going to be a spill. Yeah. Okay. And this is the one thing we have to realize with our nervous system and our capacity, is we always want to be emptying ourselves out as much as possible, so that we can actually operate and function. Now, the beauty of operating and function when you have loads more space, when you empty yourself out, okay, this is the thing. When you empty yourself out and you function from the state of being a lot more empty, that is how you build capacity. That is how your capacity expands. You actually end up, with a water bottle, right, rather than a glass, because you've been telling your nervous system that it has all of that space. So eventually your nervous system actually responds to that and says, oh, I have loads of space. Here it is. Okay.
And how can we begin to reduce our load?
Yeah. Well,
people do?
I think we can easily reduce our load by being kinder to ourselves, saying nicer things to ourselves, and being more compassionate, and not placing high unreasonable expectations on ourselves, I think, and others. I think we can really reduce that by removing these kinds of impossible perfectionism, and just noticing. Gosh, I've got a leaf blower outside my window. Just noticing, even things like social media, like there's so much extra demand on our attention, right? That's load. Now, we might not really be aware of that, because what happens is we kind of come in without putting a little barrier up to it and saying no. Yeah. Do you want me to use earphones? Because can you hear that leaf blower?
Yeah, I can now. Well, I couldn't to begin with, but now I can.
Yes, just a moment.
That's all right. Wow. Whew.
We probably need a nervous system break anyway.
Yes. I was just, it's so much to absorb, but it absolutely makes, it makes so much sense. And that's a good thing. We do need to kind of begin to wrap up, but I wanted to ask you, before you were talking about our nervous systems and the attachment and the role that, the attachment to our mother.
Mm-hmm.
And when you spoke about that, I couldn't help but wonder that I've noticed a couple of things since Mum passed away last year.
Mm-hmm.
I have noticed a whole bunch of things, like the foods that I want to eat just is naturally changing. How I want to exercise absolutely changed. And even like when you were talking about work and serving and stuff like that, and I went from this, working hard, and I've always thrived and spent every spare second I could working. And since Mum passed away, now I'm like, I still want to do incredible things,
yes,
but I'm not moving at this fast-paced motion and like I was. And even when I exercise, it's not as vigorous. I'm working out a lot and longer and more often, but it's much more like it's Pilates, and it's softer on my body. And I would never have linked that to Mum at all, but from what I'm saying, from what you're saying, is that a connection?
Well, firstly, I would say is that your nervous system is wise and it knows what it needs, and it's trying to figure out the whys of the nervous system can be not necessarily easy to do, or even really doable in many ways, right? If we follow, I mean, this is what we're talking about, following our intuition and following our body wisdom and everything else. When we drop down and we notice, oh, I actually want to do that now and not want to do that, right? It's actually probably a result of us getting more deeply connected to ourselves. And what I would probably say to you is that through, the loss of your mother, you've had to actually establish a deeper connection to yourself.
Yes.
And what we might say is that's partly because of the loss of your mother, but partly it's just simply the loss of it. Partly it's part of the grief process itself, right? It probably would have happened if you'd even lost another close family member and not just your mother. That the grief process would have led you towards some form of deeper connection with yourself. Okay. And through getting more deeply connected to yourself, then you're actually more available to your own nervous system to respond to it. Okay.
I love that. Yes.
And so it is very much the kind of relationship that a mother and a child would have. And, and this is, that's the kind of like amazing, beautiful energy of this that you're doing, is that, like some people might call it reparenting, but it's not reparenting because it's not consciously done. You're allowing your nervous system to lead you. And in this part of your life, you are truly following your nervous system rather than overriding it or coaching it or telling it needs to be something other than what it is and what it wants. You're actually saying, nervous system, I trust you to command this ship, and I will flow. And this is the journey of like, how deeply can we get connected to ourselves so that we can actually have that relationship with our nervous system.
Is our nervous system, how is our our soul self or our higher self, how is that different to our nervous system?
I think they are different in some way. I think it's important to say, you know, we don't want to also separate ourselves into too many systems. You know, like, you know, that was the issue that Descartes did, right? He kind of separated body and mind and said, I think, therefore I am. In fact, he didn't quite say that, but that's what people have decided he said, and let's just take that.
Yes.
And that led to this whole system of medicine that's been like, well, okay, you have a cardiac problem, or you have a neurological problem, or you have a vascular problem, or you have an orthopedic problem. Okay, it's the whole body. It's the whole body. I know when I mean, let me tell you for the length of craziness that the medical system can go to separating your body is that I have a spinal problem. And it first showed up in my neck, and my neck, I'm hypermobile, and my discs in my neck popped out back in 2001. And then 10 years later in 2011, discs popped out in my lower back, sacral and right down. Well, they wanted me to see two different specialists. They wanted to call it two different conditions.
Wow.
Until I said to them, I said, it's my spine.
Yeah.
Right. I had to actually say, it's my spine to the doctors for them to go, oh, well, yeah, okay. Right. So that's how crazy our medical system has got. Right. So we need to be really careful about that. You know, like as spiritual beings and people who are really focused on spirituality, we're trying to promote alternative ways of seeing the body and being, you know, and our health. And yet we can sometimes say, oh, I only want to work with energy, or I only want to see an energy practitioner, or I'll only go and see, you know, da da da. Now, my work, I know I work with the body, and I use the body as my entry point to change. But never at any time do I disregard what is happening on the mental realm, the emotional realm, you know, the biological realm, the chemical realm, the energetic realm. All of those things make up our body. Okay, and our experience of how that is in this 3D world, right? Or even beyond in dimensions, all of those things make up that experience. We do take our body with us even when we journey. Okay, we just kind of like break the molecular structure up, you know, and that's back to the shamanism thing. We change our molecular structure to be able to travel worlds, but we're still actually the same group of atoms.
Absolutely. And that's, you know, and the more you kind of travel down this road is you realize that no matter whether it's the medical industry or the spirituality industry, is often we're just taking the exact same boxes and putting different labels on them, but the box is still the exact same thing. And as you say, until we begin to really dismantle that box and understand what that is and who we are without that, then I think there's such growth and just expansion in that space. Raquel, I want to ask you one final question, and that is, what is turning you on at the moment?
So on a personal level, when I was away on the weekend, or 5 days actually on this training, I've been noticing I've been getting a lot of impulses towards being more creative, a lot more creative. So something in my nervous system is opening and expanding now, and it's, you know, it's unusual in the fact that I'm actually moving house, and this is a time when that can really kind of start to shake up your foundations. And particularly for a person such as me, it can be a pretty sort of shaky experience. I'm kind of an intuitive, instinctual kind of person, and not having a home base does actually make make that feel a little bit unsteady. So you would think that creativity would not want to be ready to be expressed, but it's showing up in all sorts of ways. And I'm like, my creative self is really ready to rock and roll. So while I was away on the weekend, I was like, well, okay, so where is that essence of my creative self inside me? Maybe I can find her neurologically, or maybe I can. Anyway, it turns out it's my inner teenager. So my inner teenager, and I actually, look, I put a little nod to my inner teenager today and put on purple eyeshadow. And kind of really kind of like big feather. Can you see my big feather earrings?
Yes,
see them?
they're beautiful. Yes.
Yeah. So they're big kind of butterfly feather earrings, which, look, I mean, you know, I was a teenager in the 80s, so I have to kind of clarify that. And so I've got purple eyeshadow on and purple feather earrings to nod to my inner teenager.
I love it. Good on you. Good on you. And that's, you know, and I think it's perfect is because, you know, if creativity is about creation, and for me, creation is just, you know, it's womb, you know, it's birthing, and it's just giving life to, you know, to this beautiful thing. And the part of me that thought, you know, it's your teenager that's just discovered its genitals for the first time, and, you know, you can have fun with that. So what else is what else on that note, what else is turning you on in terms of how you're serving and showing up in the world?
Yeah, and it really is a big turn on for me, Renee. It's not just this is what I'm offering at the moment. I'm doing a group program, and what I actually really have worked out with doing group work is that we can actually serve each other's expansion, so we can get exponential expansion through doing group work. So it's actually a bigger turn on for me to actually work in a group situation, even than working one-on-one, because we're working, many of us already have done a lot of work on the individual, our individual trauma and our individual energy. And a lot of us haven't yet really tapped into a lot more of the infiniteness that we need to do as a collective. There's a lot more work that we need to do in that realm. Now, there are people, and I've been working with them for actually decades, who have been working on clearing collective energies. What I am offering is, again, that lean towards expansion. So now I teach things like earth-keeping principles and shamanic principles and stuff that actually help with cleaning and clearing. But actually, Anna Shelley's been on the course and she's just commented. But the lean towards expansion is kind of where it's at. And we don't do that through talking about it. We actually have to do it through experiencing it. And, you know, and this is, I do understand that's the difficulty with my work, is that it's a very much an experiential experience, and you actually have to feel it. And, you know, I think I've got a talent in describing it, but it still doesn't really get to the meat and bones of it, you know, like you actually just have to feel it and then go, wow, that just happened. And it's still happening, and it hasn't stopped happening. And this is the thing with nervous system work, is it keeps going. You know, and Anna, she's a creative, and I've worked with a number of creatives in this course. It's not just for people in business. I love working with creatives and helping them expand their capacity to create. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's literally with creatives, it's like you just drop a few pebbles into places, and then they go boom, you know. And then they start like creating their own ponds and ripples, and it's like, it's, you know, because that's the creative mind, right? So it's really, it's a huge joy to be working with people on that level. It's for all
practitioners working in business who want to expand, though, and in a way that they want to expand on a soul level and not just on a 3D level.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it is. It's, you know, and that's, you mentioned the collective, and that's the importance of this work, you know, is that expanding that collective agreement. I think the ripple effect of that in humanity is absolutely huge. And I think we're ready for it, you know. I think so.
I think it's the time. Like, we've been kind of dabbling around the edges of it for a while. You know, I mean, I've been doing this work really heavily since 2004. I've been really focused on it. And, you know, we all know we've all been doing it for lifetimes. So, you know, how do you put a date on it? But, you know, I know that's, you know, a big change in my world. And in 2000 was when I read The Alchemist, and I was actually in Israel, about to go into Egypt, when I walked into a bookstore and I said, oh, I don't know what I want to read. Maybe I'll read that. And I picked it and I bought it. And that was, you know, that was kind of the big opening for me. It was actually December 1999. So yeah, the door opened for me big time in 2000, and I walked through it properly in 2004, and you know, and I'm here now and helping the collective energy expand. That's what I'm here to do.
And I'm so glad that you are one of the most incredible women that I know, and you know how much I love you and how much respect I have for you. But I just want to say thank you for showing up in this world as you do. And I'm going to cry just because I love you so much, and the work that you do is absolutely incredible, and we are so friggin' lucky to have you doing what you do in the way that you do it. And you are just one of the most intelligent, grounded, just wholehearted people that I know. And I really, you know, I respect everything that you do, and I appreciate our friendship so much. And I want to say, please don't stop. Please expanding and helping everyone else expand as well. In the most amazing way that you do that. I want to say thank you so much, and thank you for finally being on my show.
I know. I didn't think it was actually going to happen. So you know, and it's actually been such a delight. Like, I didn't imagine that it was going to even be this fantastic. So it's been great. Really enjoyed it. It's been a beautiful conversation, and it's been beautiful to be with you, as always. So thank you for being the person you are, that shows up and shares what you do.
Thanks, Raquel. Thank you so much. And I'll put all your details in the comments. And for those of you who haven't connected with Raquel, please do. And I just feel like just sit with what's coming up. We just discussed so much stuff, and I'm really curious to see what comes up for everyone who's watching and will continue to watch. But thank you so much, beautiful woman, for being on the show. Thank you all those who joined us live, and we will be back, or I will be back next week with another amazing guest. But right now, just thank you so much to the beautiful Raquel. Awesome. Thank you, beautiful woman. And I'll see everybody next week. Ciao, Bella. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this epic conversation. I'm Renee Main, and I am over and out for now. However, we can continue this conversation on our Facebook page, facebook.com/hedonistic queen, or jump onto the website reneemain.com.au, and you can explore what your own hedonistic way might look like.